Good morning, Virgin Islands, and happy Paradise Tuesday to all. And this glorious Tuesday, May 5th, 2026, here in Santa Cruz. Mayo de Cinco is celebrated today. So, to all who are celebrating, have fun, be merry, levitate. And for those of you who do not get the message, levitate means to rise, to uplift yourself, set your mind free, to liberate your thoughts, to rise above the madness, divisiveness, and the disrespect. We are here, and at least we share one planet. Let's be kind to each other, respectful and loving. Once again, welcome to At the Table with Crucian Educator. This is yours truly, Verdell Peterson. It's my pleasure to serve as the host for this 1 hour radio talk show and the number one radio station in the Caribbean, WSTX. You're listening on your radio dial to 970 AM. And also, this show streams live on the WSTX Facebook page. You can always hear the recording if you miss something. It's a call-in show. I am not expecting any guests today. So I am encouraging everybody who wishes to participate to call in. You're free to do so. And the numbers are 340-773-0390 and 340-773-0490. For those of you who are regular listeners, you know the format of the show. I usually present questions to be answered by anybody who wishes to share their thoughts. Everybody is entitled to his or her opinion, views, perspectives, theories, dreams, beliefs, and even delusions. But you're not entitled to your own facts. Now, I have not prepared any questions in advance. So the questions that I'm going to ask are going to be very spontaneous. At least 3 questions, maybe more. More the merrier, right? But before I do so, I'd like to inform you or update you on what's happening in the political arena. If you don't know by now, there will be a primary election. It is scheduled for August 1st, the first day in August. It's a Saturday. And also, there is going to be a general election. The schedule is set. Now, as far as the funding, that appears to be up in the air. So I'm going to read you some messages pertaining to that issue and just ask general questions. What are your thoughts about having a primary elections where there will be only Democratic candidates? Because you don't have more than 7 candidates running in any of the races from the Republican Party or from the ICM Party, only from the Democratic Party. So, what are your thoughts about that? Should there be a primary election funded by the Virgin Islands government? Everybody, as I said, is entitled to an opinion, but not your own facts. So I want to read some pertinent information. Again, I'm going to remind you about 6 documents everybody should be familiar with. The U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Code, the Virgin Islands Code, the Revised Organic Act of 1954, which is the de facto constitution of the U.S. Virgin Islands. 5, Public Law 94-584, which authorizes the Virgin Islands of the United States to draft its own constitution. We don't have a constitution in place. We're being governed by the Revised Organic Act. Hence, it's considered the de facto constitution. And it's not going to be replaced until we, the electorate of the U.S. Virgin Islands, ratify a draft that is approved by Congress. And finally, number 6, you should be familiar with the Treaty of Cession. That's the treaty related to the sales purchase of the Danish West Indies for $25 million in gold by the United States from Denmark. The Danish West Indies was once made up of St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. And those 3 islands were sold to the United States for $25 million in gold. The purchase came with certain conditions which are set in this treaty. It's a treaty. It's an international treaty between Denmark and the United States. I'm not going to elaborate now on it. I have done so numerous times, but you can go and Google, get the information, get yourself familiar with these 6 documents, because the biggest event, and I hope and pray it will not be a category 10 storm or hurricane. If it's to be a category 10 political storm, so be it. But we could weather both storms if we're well prepared. So knowledge is power. Topics that I avoid on this show are religion. There's nothing wrong with discussing religion, but I prefer to focus on the political process, the election process, governance, civics. I also avoid mythology, conspiracy theories, and political ideologies. You're entitled to your political party affiliation and your idea and who you think should be the best candidate. But at this point, I am focused on the process, the law, the election law. So let me read for you something here. Democratic Party responds to political parties running primary elections. Okay, and this came from the St. Croix source. Dear source, I have offered testimony before the Rules and Judicial Committee of the legislature that our party at this time does not have the resources and capability to finance and conduct a free, fair, and open primary election with an opportunity for maximum participation of all Democrats who are also taxpayers. Democracy functions best when there is full participation of all the people. Historically and traditionally, the election system conducts and certifies the primary election for both party public officials and party leaders with appropriate legislative funding, notwithstanding Section 232 of the Election Code. There is no specific section of the Election Code that clearly states that the parties must conduct and found the primary for party public officials and or party leaders. Section 232 of the code as written is in conflict with many other pertinent aspects of the election law. Furthermore, it does not make sense to propose piecemeal election reform or change in the middle of critical election year for implementation of in the same year. This only adds to the confusion, division, unilateral, and personal approach to solving this and many of our important and serious problems. We have a good system that works democratically for all of us. Let's not revert back to the old corrupt, manipulated, and handpicked system of selecting our public officials and party leaders by a limited and self-serving group of electorates. Some states have funded party primaries. Many others are now moving toward this mainly because of the undemocratic, corrupt, and manipulative manner in which some parties conduct their important process. Finally, at this time, there are much more important issues confronted our people every day that we should be focusing on. Folks are suffering and can't make ends meet. There's hopelessness, distrust, disillusionment, and no relief in sight. They cannot live on a confused, populistic, and elusive election chance in the middle of the election year and cannot pay their bills with such irrelevant measures. Moreover, the 31st legislature, through Act number 7758, fiscal year 2016 executive budget, has set aside funding for this year's primary as it is accustomed to do historically and traditionally according to law. In view of all the aforementioned facts and thoughts, the decision of the St. Croix board is questionable and is apparently in conflict with current law as it pertains to Title 18 of the VI Code. And guess what? This was written by the former state chair of the Democratic Party of the Virgin Islands, Cecil R. Benjamin. So this was written previously, but it's still applicable today, except for one part. The Republican Party took the Virgin Islands election system to court and prevailed. Now the political parties are responsible for funding election of party leaders or party officers, but not for funding public offices. The Democratic Party is a private entity, a private organization. It's not a government organization. Elections are conducted by the Virgin Islands election system so that the people who are eligible to vote can choose who they wish to represent them in government. We have what is known as a representative democracy. Political parties don't pay for that. Historically, political parties never did, never happened. In the past, political parties were allowed to place the nominees for political party offices on the ballot. Have you noticed the ballot have changed? You don't see anymore when you go to the election to choose party officers. We don't choose because you're a registered Democrat. You don't choose who's going to be the state chair or the district chair of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, because that's party business. However, a public election is for public officials. And again, my question, what's your thought on that? About the Virgin Islands government paying for the primary election. We'll see what happens, but this was a letter submitted on February 12th, 2016. Here we are 10 years later, and we still have that conflict, that issue going on about who's supposed to pay for primary elections when the law is there. And the law has been clarified. Now, let's take you to 2026. This April 14, 2026, this is a letter. Well, it was submitted in April 10th, 2026, entitled Plaskett and Democrat Candidates Urge Senate to Fund Primary Elections. Why are we having this conflict again? Isn't it clear? Isn't it understood? There was a ruling by Judge Robert, a district judge, Robert Malloy, and we still have not figured out, has the 36th legislature set aside any monies for the election system to conduct this election, this primary election? Well, we see how that unfolds. But that's my first thought. So let me read this letter. Okay, delegate, well, it's actually a news article here. Delegate to Congress, Stacey Plaskett, that is our current delegate to Congress, and 4 other Democrats seeking territorial offices, should have been offices, have written to the Virgin Islands legislature. Have they responded yet? I don't know. calling on lawmakers to fully fund the upcoming 2026 primary elections, according to a statement issued Thursday. The letter sent Tuesday to Senate President Milton Potter and the 36th legislature asserts the Virgin Islands Board of Elections is obligated by law to conduct primary elections and the legislature is obligated to fund them. Well, this part needs clarity because it's my understanding the supervisor of elections conducts the election. And okay, I could be wrong. You let me know. So our next question. Who conducts the primary election? Is it the Board of Elections or is it the supervisor of elections? So that part needs clarity. In any event, let me go ahead. Moorhead, this is referring to Shelley Moorhead. Okay, he is saying, well, okay, wait a minute. Moorhead, who is also a candidate running for delegate to Congress, he said, was whether it was appropriate to use tax money for primary elections that only party members could vote in, with only Democrats allowed to vote in the Democratic Party. The idea of opening primaries to all registered voters, regardless of party affiliation, has been around for 2 decades. It's been around, but unfortunately, as I said, you don't have more than 7 persons running for delegate to Congress from the Republican Party or from the ICM Party. So what's up with that? It has been around. It's open to all parties, political parties. But if the numbers are not there, how would you? It's only Democrats because Democrats have more than 7. You have more than 7. One. Blessing, good morning. Welcome.
Well, good morning to you, sis. How are you doing?
Oh, it's a blessing. I'm doing wonderful. I'm feeling spiritually uplifted today.
How about that? That's a beautiful thing.
I'm so happy you called. Thank you.
Oh, listen. Thank you. It's been a little hectic lately, but you know how life is, especially when you're caretaking.
Yes. And blessings to your mom.
Thank you. I'll let her know. As soon as I see her today, I'll let her know.
And your sister Melba, who I haven't seen in ages.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were listening to me, but I was talking about this issue of the legislature funding the primary elections.
Yeah.
Has that been resolved?
I believe so. I believe it has.
Okay.
But I am more concerned with the dereliction of duty. And by that I mean exactly what I said. It's become obvious to me that many members of the body put their own concerns above the job which they have taken an oath to.
Mm-hmm.
It is the legislature's duty and mandate to provide funding for the executive branch to operate. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that.
Good morning. Once again, introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. This is Emmett Hansen.
Uh-huh. And you are also an aspirant for delegate to House of Representatives.
Yes, ma'am. I have I've been working with the DNC for, geez, I think 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a question of me looking at a picture and knowing who someone is. The advantage to that is that I've already worked with the DNC, and let me quickly explain the process. You sit in a caucus meeting. If you're a Democrat, you're with the Democrats. If you're a Republican, you're with them. It's the Green Party. And I guess if you're independent, you just wander around the hall.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that, you know, so what happens is that you sit in caucus and you present your resolutions, you present the things that you want to accomplish, and you get a yay or nay. The reason that is so important is because when you get on the floor and your bill comes up, you already have a built-in caucus to support you.
Uh-huh.
So there's no ifs, ands, or maybe. And if you're smart, what you'll do is you'll reach across the aisle.
Thank you.
And get votes that way. Now, I have a history of doing that. You know, Lorraine Berry, God bless her, pointed out to me when I was leaving the Senate that I had a better passage rate than anyone else that she ever served with. I didn't realize it at the time, but I really appreciated Lorraine bringing that to my attention. But the reason for that, if anybody cares to go and look back, all of my major bills had 10, 12, 13, 14 co-sponsors. So this is not new to me. This is how I know to legislate. And that is why knowing people there and them knowing you, they know your character, they know your work. And let me throw this in. The local Democratic Party or National Party never funded my church. That was done out of my pocket because I saw it as an investment in my people.
So they Epstein was not wrong to send you a check?
I'm sorry, who?
Jeffrey Epstein.
No.
He never sent you a check?
Not me. Not me. I'll tell you something funny. I got invited to a Christmas party. I think it was my first term, but the second Christmas. So I didn't know who the person was.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and I asked him, I said, who these people are? Because you know me forever. You know I know Big Keto Company. Never have been. That's just me. Not that I don't like people. I have friends that I love dearly that I've never been out of touch with. Then I will be around. But to just be in soiree just for so, that's not me. So I asked the person, who are these people? Because I want to know why they invited me to fest.
Mm-hmm.
The person opened the envelope, looked at it, looked at me, shook the invitation back and tore it in half, put it in the shredder and wiped the hands on the pants and looked at me dead in the eye and said, MSMAO kind of people. I said, okay, no problem. Swear to God, the physical reaction told me everything I needed to know.
Okay, this is you know by the company you keep, but
Thank you.
it's good to
Thank
know
you.
that you reach out to everybody because as a representative of the territory, you represent all people, whether you're Democrats, Republican, ICM, independent. You representing the entire territory. And I want to ask you a question here pertaining to the eligibility requirement because last night I was listening to a member of the Board of Elections. I was just could not believe what I was hearing.
Mm-hmm.
She claimed the eligibility requirement to run for delegate to House of Representatives is in the U.S. Constitution. And I have here when the U.S. Constitution became effective. It became effective for the ratifying states when New Hampshire is the 9th state to ratify it. And that was June 21st, 1788. I mentioned earlier the sales purchase of the Danish West Indies, 1917.
Yes.
How could anybody believe There wasn't even no concept of a territory then.
No.
When this Constitution was written, Section 1 of the Constitution is referring to electing House of Representatives. I don't know how a board of election member could confuse the eligibility requirement for House of Representative, which is from the state of one of the, you have at least one House of a representative from each state, at least one, and Washington, D.C., correct?
Yeah, but even more so to that. Let's take sense out of nonsense, because I agree with your line of thought when you're saying you're going till back to 17 something. Okay, you got back to say, not you, but and I don't know who you're speaking of, so I'm just going.
No, I don't personalize it, but I just want people to be aware.
The fact of the matter is that you cannot class us as a territory with that, because remember, Governor Bryan, I think, is the 8th elected governor.
The 9th.
The 9th. Thank you. You're right. The 9th. But just to say that, to say how young the territory is.
Exactly.
Americans. We were going to school and doing homework when Melvin H. Evans, Governor Evans, was elected.
1970.
Till back then, it's not applicable. We have an organic act because that is our constitution.
Exactly. I'm like, and these people are elected to a board of elections and given false information.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the U.S. code that give you the eligibility requirements to run for delegate to House of Representatives from the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Yeah.
Of course you would be.
Yeah.
You're running for that office.
We know what type of people we are.
Don't you have to be an inhabitant of the U.S. Virgin Islands to run for that position here in an election, a public election?
Of course, because if you're not living here, how can you represent?
Thank you. That's why they use the word inhabitant and not resident, because it's like you're rooted here.
Yeah,
it's not just as simple. You come here 3 years and you just resign.
Okay, it's not because you have a timeshare. It's deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that anyone of the soil, whether born or have become of the soil, would want it that way.
It always been that way. I don't know how it changed. When you had these new members of the board of election, they twist and turn and stir everything up and make everything confused. That I calling them, I'm sorry if it offends anybody, board of confusion. You must be an inhabitant of the U.S. Virgin Islands to run for that. Do you know there's an aspirant, because nobody is actual candidate until the nomination petition is processed.
Right.
And the nominees are certified to be placed on the ballot by the supervisor of elections.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been brought to my attention, one of the aspirants running for the same office, delegate to House of Representatives, is a New York resident. And her rationale is it's in the U.S. Constitution that says she could become an inhabitant of the U.S. Virgin Islands once she's elected. What's your thought on that?
I think that's bull.
I'm like, shocked.
Yeah, I think that's straight up bull, because the long and short of it, listen, you don't come thing after, okay? Let's something else this person talking about. You have to be that first. That is the first qualification before anything else. That is the first qualification that you are of the soil one way or another. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring up a whole name. I don't think we have ever had anyone find someplace else and come here to live that was more of the soil than digress field.
That's right. I agree with you.
About from America. You could find him in any hole in the wild, and you don't care if you cuss him, he having a good time.
A Republican, and I supported him.
Yes, because he meant well. But you see, the division wasn't as deep and nasty as it is now. But the thing is, I have had countless conversations with him before, during, and after my time in the Senate. I spoke with him as a reporter. I spoke with him as an interesting personality. I spoke with him ultimately as a friend. I couldn't tell that man nothing to make him move from where he wants to be.
Do you know how long he had a bona fide residency here in the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Oh, God.
40 years or more?
Easily. But he was a good man.
I think one person that could probably match that record consistently, consecutively residing here in the territory, the longest would be you. Am I correct?
My own guy way beyond that. way beyond that. Yeah, man.
Not that I'm endorsing any candidate because I'm staying neutral. I believe as a talk show host, neutrality is important. Give everyone interested in being a guest on this show, whether you are a candidate for public office or just simply have an interest in the affairs of the U.S. Virgin Islands, is welcome to appear on my show. Yeah. But especially, I would like to hear from all the candidates running in each race. It's an open invitation. Some get the message, but their silence speaks.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing is that if you can, I appreciate and respect your position, first of all. And be it far from me to try and change your mind. It's your show. You run your show how you want. I've had radio shows and TV shows and whatnot, and I would set the rules for that. So I completely appreciate your insistence on being not only authentic but ethical.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
So how long you would say you resided on St. Croix consecutively?
Consecutively? Jesus Christ, that's way over. Let's see. That would be 20 years, so 45 years since I came back from college.
That's what I was saying. I know you attended
But I was away for 6 years.
Dillard University, right?
Yeah, between that and working. You know.
In New Orleans. My hometown, my second hometown, New Orleans, Louisiana.
So much like St. Croix.
That's right. Yep.
Food and gumbo is just a darker version of Kalaloo.
Somebody use something like Crucian.
That's what brought my belly down. Yeah, beignet is just tiny cake with some sugar.
Oh yeah. I love my beignet.
Yeah, man. Jambalaya is seasoned right. It's the same thing. Listen, don't mind him about Miami. You know, Miami is Cuban North.
When I have an interesting mix, instead of Kalaloo, Calaboo.
Calaboo, here's that.
Gumbo and Kalaloo together. I have a combination, okay?
So you put the same thing in them, okra and whatnot.
It's the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, man. But I think that I want to. I got to run in a few
No
moments. But I want to
problem.
say this. I'm glad that you're staying on the fact that the legislature has been delinquent deliberately in
Hmm.
denying the money for the Board of Education. The Board of Education should be jumping up screaming because they're not the Board of Denial. They're not the Board of choosing it and picking it. They're the Board of Elections. Their only function is to hold election. And if you can't do that, what good are you? That's like having a dentist that don't like to look in people's mouth. You
But
just quit.
clarify something for me because this letter that was written by Stacy Plaskett,
Mm-hmm.
she's saying that the Board of Elections conduct the primary elections. Is it the Board of Elections or is it the Supervisor of Elections? Because there have been some changes to the election laws. Act 8690, you're familiar with that one?
I'm not right off the top of my head, so I don't want to comment on something
Okay, all right.
I'm not familiar with.
Well, I throw it out there. Well, thank you. If you have to run, it was a blessing to hear from you.
My friend,
Again,
is always good. It is really always good. So listen, you made the invitation, so let me know when you need me to come on as a candidate, and I will do so.
okay, I will send you a text message.
All right, good thing. Well, United, thanks for listening. Take care, brother.
Okay, blessings. Okay, well, there you heard from an aspirant for delegate to House of Representatives. And I have some other things I could read to you. This year in the District Court of the Virgin Islands, Division St. Thomas and St. John. This goes back to case where the plaintiffs were the Republican National Committee, Republican Party of the Virgin Islands, and the defendants was the Virgin Islands Board of Elections, Carolyn Fox in her official capacity as the supervisor of elections systems, Virgin Islands. Judgment. Before the court are the parties' respective motions for summary judgment for the reasons stated in the accompanying memorandum opinion of even date. It is hereby ordered that defendant's motion for summary judgment filed on August 8, 2023 is denied. It's further ordered that plaintiffs, Republican National Committee, and Republican Party of the Virgin Islands motion for summary judgment filed August 8, 2023 is granted in part and denied in part. It further ordered that Title 18 of the Virgin Islands Code, number 232, is deemed unconstitutional to the extent it allows the Virgin Islands Board of Elections the right and authority to reject a political party's process used in selecting the party officers and candidates for public office. It is further ordered that Title 18 number 301 CD are preempted by the Lanham Act and are void to the extent it allows a Virgin Islands political party to use its national affiliates, trademark, its symbol, emblem, or insight without approval of the owner of the trademark. It further order that Title 18, Section 303 AC and 305 are deemed unconstitutional and here void. It's further ordered that Title 18 deemed unconstitutional only to the extent It provides the supervisor of elections the authority to designate the time and location of organizational meeting of the first territorial committee of each party after a primary election. This provision of Section 301 is void. All other provisions stated in Section 34A are valid and therefore not unconstitutional. It, it, it further ordered that 18, 307, and 342 are deemed unconstitutional and here void. Order adjudicated decree that judgment is granted in favor of the plaintiff, the Republican National Committee and Republican Party of the Virgin Islands are against the defendants, Virgin Islands Board of Elections and Carolyn Fact, Supervisor of Elections, plaintiff's claim for violation of 42 U.S. Code number 1983. A further order adjudicated and decreed that the defendants are hereby enjoined from enforcing the provisions of 18 Virgin Islands Code, sections 232, 301 A, C, D, D, 303 A, B, and C, etc. Okay. The judgment is that certain parts of Virgin Islands Code was declared unconstitutional, and the date was January 10, 2024. Robert Malloy, Chief Judge. Okay, so some parts of the Virgin Islands Code are unconstitutional. Bottom line. All right. In other words, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, their party affairs belongs to them. The primary elections are conducted by the Virgin Islands election systems, okay? I am awaiting clarity, and specifically, is it the Board of Elections or the Supervisor of Election that conducts the primary? As is indicated in this one letter that I was reading. Let's go back to that letter here. Plaskett and Democrat candidates are set to fund primary elections. According to what a prospective candidate is saying, Shelley Moorhead, if public money funds this primary, it must comply with the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and the Voting Rights Act. That means it cannot be exclusionary. It cannot be a closed party funded by taxpayers, he said. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't know if taxpayers are the one going to vote, then who's supposed to fund it? It's not like it's not a private election. If you're running for delegate to House of Representatives, that's a public office. It's not like you're on a board, like the GRS board. You don't have to be a registered voter or on some other special non-profit organization. This is a public election. Who is supposed to fund it? It's not taxpayers' money. Well, in my opinion, and let me say that, and my understanding of the Virgin Islands Code, the legislature is supposed to fund all elections whether it's a primary, a general, a special election, a runoff election, any election for public offices is funded by the taxpayers. Oh, so continue on. If a primary election is funded by taxpayers' dollars, administered by the election system of the Virgin Islands, conducted using public infrastructure, then it is not a private party event. It is a state action, Mohammed said. I agree with that. And that's exactly why it should be. We will not be going to elect party officers for any of the political parties. There are three political parties registered here in the territory: the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and the ICM Party. They run their own affairs. We, the voters, have nothing to do with their party affairs unless we are a member of the party. I am a registered Republican at this moment, but as is going to be an exciting primary election with only Democrats, I have made the decision to go change to register as a Democrat because I would like to participate in a primary election. Because your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. How are you going to make a change? How are you going to be part of the solution unless you participate in the election process? Here's a question again. Who should pay for the Virgin Islands primary election? This has long been a topic of heated conversation and occasional litigation. Ain't not lying about that. Inconsistencies in Virgin Islands election laws, practices, and fundings have led to countless legislative and court hearings. And we have one pending. I will not elaborate now on that one, but the same issue again. In 1997, the St. Croix Election Board interpreted the Virgin Islands Code as requiring political parties to be responsible for primary elections. That was in 1997. In March 2000, Governor Charles Turnbull vetoed a bill that would have codified in law that political parties were responsible for holding their own primaries. A few months later, election officials reversed course and in another effort not to disenfranchise voters, decided to pay for primaries. More dispute followed. In 2002, public funds were allocated to fund primaries. That was up for debate again by the election system in 2014, 2015, 2016. The board would later be rolled into a unified territorial board of elections, would oversee primary elections, but the individual parties would need to pay for them. It was not a new idea. This led to a divided board of elections and a standoff with the legislature about funding the primaries. Interesting. Chief Judge Malloy of the U.S. District Court of the Virgin Islands ultimately voided 10 local provisions and found that two others were preempted by existing federal laws. Malloy order prohibited election officials from enforcing the voided laws. The people choose the party, and the party chooses its candidates. Anything less undermines the First Amendment and will of party members. She said, I guess this is Cara Burke. Okay. Speaking to the source Monday, Burke said lawmakers now needed to put infrastructure in place to make elections more transparent and in line with the ruling. So I read to you some of the ruling by Judge Malloy. Reading is fundamental. Do not be fooled by the propaganda. Read all the relevant documents that I mentioned previously, as well as these court rulings. Read the ruling by Judge Robert Malloy, the recent one and the one he made previously in 2024. He made one recently. So we back again, the same thing, this ongoing dispute. But the laws are clear. Robert Malloy is a district judge. Okay? So he's paying attention to federal laws and what's constitutional or not. Again, meaning that it was codified so that this party has access to the ballot, she said. The process would include a party to define to the supervisor of elections that these 10 people this year you have already deemed eligible because they meet our requirements set forth by the government, that based on our own standards, and we will have, for instance, their dues, they're in good standing, that kind of thing. There are quite a number of things that we plan to implement, that they've met these requirements, and as such, they are certified to run in the primary election as Democrats. And the judge recently dismissed some of the claims by those that challenged the ruling he recently made. There was an agreement between the supervisor of elections and Cara Burke. They went into mediation. They came up with something, both signed, all the parties involved signed, and it is final. So we are going to see the Democratic Party going to certify who can run as a Democrat in the primary. That's the bottom line. Well, of course, we'll see what happens because it's an ongoing debacle. Burt testified before the Senate Government Operations, Veterans Affairs, and Consumer Protection Committee August 8th after Senator Alma Francis Heiliger introduced legislation codifying process for political parties to choose the candidates for public office, highlighting a voided provision stating that the elections board will be responsible for certifying the process to be used by any political party to select party officers and candidates for public office. Frances Heiliger said she saw where the law needed to be fixed ahead of the next election cycle. During her own prepared testimony, Burke called the committee meeting the perfect opportunity to begin to reset and clarify the standards governing the role of political parties in primary elections. This is a pivotal moment, one that allows us to reaffirm our commitment to constitutional principles and electoral integrity, she said, before acknowledging her counterparts in the Republican Party for filing the legal challenge, which she said opened the door for all parties, Democratic, Republican, and others, to reassert the authority and responsibility in the electoral process. Bork recommended several amendments to the bill, which later failed to advance out of committee for lack of second. Speaking to the source, Bork acknowledged the difficulty of convincing elected officials to change the same election laws that put them in office. It is very, very tall order, but it's a judge order. I mean, pun intended to say. It's still a judge order. They have to fix it. If we have to go to court and get over this, we will, which she did and prevailed. Burke again credited the Republican Party for the legal challenge, which she said showed that the territory was operating under unconstitutional laws. The way we felt real uncomfortable. The party should feel comfortable with its candidate, she said. I can tell you, we were not always comfortable, and we had members, voters coming to us and questioning the process. And we kept saying there is nothing we could do because that's the law. That's how the law is written. Well, as I said, it was a recent court decision by Judge Malloy, and it will be put in effect. Of course, there are challenges to that, and we'll see how that plays out. But as of now, there is going to be a primary election unless something changes. It's scheduled for August 1st, a Saturday, and only Democrats are involved, but they're going to be a pre-screening of which Democrats are going to be placed on the ballot, because just because somebody is saying they're running as a Democrat doesn't mean they may be certified by the Democratic Party. Because if you never paid dues, you never participated in party politics, now all of a sudden you're using the label? No. Well, thank you for listening. Live, listen, learn, love, and levitate.